welcome to Tech Talks, a People and Planet podcast. Today I'm joined by Alex Clarke, the co-founder and CEO of carbon removals business Black Bull Biochar. Alex, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Lee. Yeah, good to see you. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, I'm good. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a super interesting chat. You guys, I know, are in the carbon removal tech space. I guess first question is, tell us a little bit about why that actually matters.
Sure. Yeah, carbon removals are technologies that not everyone's familiar with. You might have heard of renewable energy or other sort of energy efficiency measures, but carbon removals is an emerging, quite exciting area, which is going to get bigger and bigger into the future. Effectively, what that means is a whole suite of technologies. There's almost, roughly 10 of them actually, that deliberately remove CO2 from the atmosphere. I know you already had, I think, Jim Mann in your pod a couple of months ago. So he's looking at one in particular called enhanced weathering, whereas we're looking at one called biochar. And most people might be familiar with afforestation as a method of removal. Why this stuff matters, though, is that if you look at stuff like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports, removals are pretty much essential to all us as a globe reaching net zero targets. So they're pretty much in every single climate model, and yet they're not really discussed that often. It's one of those rare areas of technology growth where the scale up for this stuff it's not whether it happens, it actually has to happen, and it will happen, which makes it quite an exciting place to also be a startup. Often people then ask me, around the numbers around this thing, what does that actually mean if you put it into numbers? So what does that scale up look like? And I try to point them to different reports that are independent of me, of course. But for instance, the University of Oxford has done a state of the carbon report this year, which identified around 7 to 9 billion tons of CO2 removed per year is what we need to do by 2050 as a world to meet that 1.5 degree Paris Agreement target. That again is not an easy number to digest. So I like to describe that on another level as if you put into the emissions for perhaps of the fossil fuel industry. So through the production, transport and processing of oil and gas, we emit about 5 to 6 billion tons of CO2. So effectively what we're looking to do is take that and take that out the atmosphere and more every year by 2050.
Huge numbers.
Big number. I should say this is not a silver bullet. I very much say is climate policy needs to be a quiver of arrows to solve the climate crisis, not just a silver bullet. And so we have to do this in conjunction with everything else. It's just that this is totally essential.
Interesting stuff. Tell us a little bit more about your company then, Black Bull Biochar. What is biochar?
Yeah, so Black Bull Biochar, or BBB, sometimes as we call it, we're a biochar-focused carbon removal company, tech company. We're about 2.5 years old, and biochar itself is one of these carbon removals. It's a carbon-rich product produced by stabilizing the carbon captured in biomass, typically wood. And that CO2 has been removed from the air by plants. So it should be clear that that's actually where the CO2 removal happens. It's just then locked in into a carbon storage format through a process called pyrolysis, which basically entails heating biomass in a low oxygen environment, creating this charcoal-like product. And so some people are asking, well, surely you're still relying on the sort of plant or the tree process, which we are. The difference here is that instead of that wood chips, say, going into chipboard or going into biomass boilers and being emitted back into the atmosphere, we're locking that into that charcoal product.
Nice. Okay. So how does it work in respect to farming then?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point. So, what excites us, or me in particular, about biochar is not just the carbon removal element. It's also, so we like to call it's carbon storage with benefits. So just actually one step before the farming process. So we create renewable heat as we are making this biochar product through the manufacturing of biochar. So one thing we're doing, one element of our business is actually co-locating our pyrolysis kit, our machinery, at industrial sites in the northwest of England, which flushes in that renewable hot water and helps them decarbonize. That's the sort of first element of our business, which is quite exciting, and helps them get off the different oil and gas sort of burning uses. the second bit is basically why we are Black Bull Biochar, which is the area in agriculture that you allude to. So we're working with the dairy industry. We've been working with the likes of Arla, people may have heard of. They're one of the largest dairy crops in the world, particularly up in Cumbria, I think, Lee, where you've got some good connections there. So we're working with them and have been for 2-3 years to see how can we use biochar in the most practical and most effective way on the land as an agricultural product. So we're focusing on livestock, hence the dairy farming link, and this is largely to do with their waste streams, or their organic fertilizer, we call it. Whereas exciting is if you apply biochar to something like farm manure or to slurry, you get these significant reductions in nitrous oxide emissions and ammonia emissions. So it's, again, not just like carbon storage, also, improving environmental impacts on farming through actually quite a low amount of usage of this product. And then the kicker, though, is that why does this matter to the farmer? Is that actually when you then apply this, as we sort of describe it, as like a supercharged organic fertilizer to the land, so that's the slurry mixed with the biochar or with the farmer manure, we've seen fantastic results in improving grassland yield. And we've been doing these trials up in Scotland with SRUC, and we've seen, in our most recent release of results, we've seen increases in yield of 16% of grassland yield with our biochar product compared to just using slurry. And that's the sort of stuff that gets the farmers really excited.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how do you know that the carbon removal process is actually happening then? And then when it has happened, how long is it stored for?
Yeah, this is integral to us as a business. So, the carbon removal space hasn't been around that long, and we create something called carbon credits in the process of doing this. It's basically a load of data that proves that carbon removal is happening. So the important thing here is a couple of things. Is one is that we have actually independent bodies verifying our carbon removal. So we have a couple of companies. One is DFS Plus, who's actually a consultancy I used to work for, and actually we spun out Black Bull Biochar from them. So they do a life cycle analysis. Their expertise is in sustainability consulting, and they assess our business and our impact to make sure that net removal is happening. That's also then processed with bodies like Puro Earth, who effectively are certifying the carbon credits to make sure those carbon credit buyers know that this stuff is real and is definitely happening. It is an emerging area in terms of understanding that carbon storage. I mean that broadly in the space of carbon removal. So the great thing about biochar is actually a lot of the academic work has been already done. So we know, for instance, that biochar can last for thousands of years in the soil, and actually there's some really interesting stuff around where biochar was first found, which is in the Amazonia rainforest. So we've got records of biochar being used 10,000 years ago by indigenous people. So we know it can last for a very long time, and depending on how you make it and the process you go through, which is that not all biochars are made equal, you can increase that carbon storage potential or even tailor it to have different impacts for farming. And so us at BBP, at BBB, carbon integrity is essential to who we are. And so we've actually created a step-by-step char codes, as we like to call it, or QR code analysis process throughout our value chain, so you can track where all the feedstock's coming from, but then also where the biochar is going, to be sure that exactly how your carbon removal has happened throughout your value chain, and also where it's going and where it's being applied to land.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So just walk us through your business model then, and then perhaps what sets you apart, what's unique about you guys.
Yeah, so our business model is split into 3 areas in a sense. One thing is we buy our process machinery to make our biochar, and we install that and co-locate that on industrial sites, such as what we're doing up in the northwest, just north of Manchester, with a company called Alstrom. So we co-locate those machines, and then we create that renewable heat. So we look to sell that heat as well. Alongside that, we then sell the biochar product to farmers, and to ensure that biochar product is as cheap as possible for farmers, we sell the carbon credits associated with the biochar to other carbon credit buyers, and they can be big agri-tech firms, they can be big banks. It depends who's willing to make sure that product is as cheap as possible for the farmer.
And so those carbon credits go against their their policies that, like, if it's a bank or whatever, then they've got certain sustainability policies that they've got to adhere to. That's how it
Yeah,
works?
yeah, exactly. So a good example is Microsoft, who are one of the biggest
Yeah.
investors in this area. They've bought, a huge amount of carbon removal credits, and what excites them about it, and a lot of other carbon removal credit buyers specifically, is that you're having a much larger impact on the environment in a positive way. I mean, you can get a range of different credits. People might have seen, when you go to buy a flight, you might see, offset your emissions for £1. I'll be honest with you, that stuff is virtually useless. It doesn't really do anything for the planet. I'm not sure my lawyer friend would like me saying this, but yeah, not helpful at all in many ways, because you can't really, it's not really showing there's been some sort of reduction. It's just showing that emission that could happen hasn't happened, we think, but it's not great. And this is why carbon removal is so exciting, because it's a much more sure way to ensure that removal is happening. But Leah, I should also mention, what makes us unique. There's other biochar companies out there, but what we've really focused on, me and Hamish, my co-founder, is actually creating a system that scales. That's the big thing. I mentioned those massive numbers at the start of this conversation, and we need to have biochar systems at scale, and some systems have struggled to do that. And the way we're doing that is through really great partnerships with big players. So I mentioned Arla, they've got 10,000 farms. Alstrom, who we're co-locating on machines with, they've got 42 industrial sites globally. We've also got Jenkinson on board, who one of the largest biomass producers in the UK. The University of Edinburgh have been helping us from the start. So there's all these really big players which help us to enable a system that scales. And also we're buying our machinery off the shelf. So we're not, it's not starting from scratch here with the actual technology itself. We're working with two great German manufacturers who have got, at least 30 machines in the field. So this is proven stuff. And last but not least is our carbon integrity piece, as I mentioned. And we're here very much to, as we see it, revolutionize the traceability and permanence of that biochar carbon removal credit. So that carbon credit buyer knows, they can guarantee their end-to-end supply chain and really trust the carbon removal they're purchasing.
Interesting stuff. Okay. So how have you arrived here then? What's your story and background, and what inspired you, I suppose, to set up Black Bull Biochar?
Yeah, it's a winding road. I've got a bit of a hot mess of a background, which is actually quite good for this role. A lot of people think they leave university and stuff, or they leave school, and you get sort of kind of segmented into it in one small area of a company, and you focus on that. I definitely had quite a sort of scatty start to my career, jumping around different things. But originally I studied environmental geoscience at Cardiff University, but loved science in a sense. But I really wanted to see how do you create tangible solutions for these environmental problems? And so I then did like a social science master's and studied sort of green energy and oil and gas as well over 2 years to figure out a bit more of a sort of, a solutions focused style of work. And since then I've worked in R&D consulting, and I've also worked in science policy. So I worked for the Royal Society, and actually that's where I first came across biochar and their carbon removals report in 2018. And so, I've always been keen to find solutions to big problems. But the reason I'm here is really thanks to a couple of people, and I should give a shout out to them. And that's two former line managers, Federico Magalini and David Rocha, who gave me a pretty weird but fantastic role. And I recommend this to anyone who wants to motivate your workforce, is that I was given a role which was a 4-day-a-week consulting week, but 1 day a week that I could focus on new ideas and try and focus on spinning out assets for the company. And this was just such an exciting job, and allowed me to contact lots of different people, explore concepts I hadn't really got round to exploring yet. And this led me to Saran Sohi at the University of Edinburgh, who I often describe as the father of biochar in the UK. I'm not sure he likes that description, but he's a super font of knowledge here. And through him, he put me in touch with Hamish Kruber, who's my co-founder and has a PhD in biochar. I really couldn't do this without him. So me and Hamish in lockdown, we spent about a year together on a feasibility study funded by the government on how to build Black Bull Biochar. And then we were kindly put through to the second round of that competition and managed to get to where we are today.
Wow, incredible. And so BBB's been operational, what did you say, for a couple of years, did you say?
Yeah, I did 2.5 years. Yeah, roughly. And I said, yeah, me and Hamish spent about a year before working on how to get it right before we spun it out and set it up. So yeah, we're still pretty new in the scene, but yeah.
I mean, it's rarely plain sailing, isn't it, with startups? I always like to ask this question on the show because there's lots of other founders that tune in also. Share with us any challenges and how you've managed to navigate those.
Yeah, no, plenty of challenges. I won't bore you with all of them, but no, it's amazing how many things pop out the woodwork which you don't expect when you're doing this kind of role. And I think the big thing for a lot of founders in particular is, start off with two of you, and it's like, how do you grow your team and basically change your role yourself every time someone joins? It's basically a new department joining, and so how do you get through that in a space that isn't really known? So we've been hiring people from all sorts of different industries to join us on our mission, and yet their role perhaps has never existed in the industry before, and so that's been a huge challenge. And I think it's something we're probably most proud of, and this through your background of helping people hire. We've got a diverse team, and I mean that in terms of background as well as skill sets. We're only 8 people right now, but I'm so proud of how skilled that team is and how great they are working together. We've got a lovely ethos here. If you get the right people in your company, I think you can tackle any problems. And I don't know if you've seen this as well, but I think if you get those hires wrong, no matter how good your idea is, but you can actually be in deep trouble. So that's been something I'm proud that we've really overcome.
Cost of a bad hire is crucially bad for the business, but if you get the right people, especially at the start, then that just feeds right through to the culture, doesn't it? But that culture always comes from the founders. It's everything that the people that you hire, they live and breathe what you guys do. So, I think that's probably kudos to you guys as well, that you've managed to be able to hire and retain that team so far.
Yeah, I think, and Hamish, if he's listening, I'm lucky to have him because we have very complementary skill sets. I think the good thing about me and Hamish is we have he's the CTO and actually I'm the CEO, so we're naturally have different roles, but he rolls with all the punches, and he understands our product so well, and so we're very lucky to have someone with as unique a skill set as him in Biochar. So we think we're a pretty good match, but hopefully our employees think so as well.
What comes next then, Alex? What's exciting that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, so what's next is very exciting. So we are looking to do a new funding round, and we're looking to double our team size. So for now, there, we're looking for project managers. We're growing our sales team, marketing, expanding our ops team in Manchester as well. We're also looking to double the machinery on our existing production sites, up and down the M6 corridor, and expand to new sites as well, and really prove that point of scale. We're already, as of the end of this month, we'll be the largest biochar producer in the country, and we're hoping to maintain that as our position in the UK market. So that involves me running around speaking to a lot of investors at this point. If you're an investor interested in climate tech, and particularly in carbon removals, do come knocking, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, why Manchester in particular?
Look, Manchester's got a really fascinating ecosystem at the moment. You've got really great systems being set up. You've got people like the Better Business Network who are growing great sort of synergies between companies. You've got the big industrial parks out in Old Trafford. You've then got a sort of a good legacy of industrial skills there, and you've got this quite unique Greater Manchester Combined Authority situation, and so if you look at Greater Manchester in the last 10 years, it's been a relatively unique success story in the UK, and it's a perfect place for us to scale from. So we've got a London office and my co-founders in Scotland, but we are looking to scale our ops team in Manchester, but also R&D up in Edinburgh, and keep that finance base down in London. So we're going to be all over the place, but also I should say actually our dairy farmers aren't far away as well. So on the west coast of the UK is basically where all the grassland is and where all the dairy farms are. So that Cumbria down to Manchester spot is our bit of the map we're looking to dominate. You've got
an exciting few months ahead of you.
I do, but Lee, I'd love to know as well from your side. You focus on Manchester quite a bit. What about why did you set up the Tech Network and do this sort of podcasting?
So I set up the Tech Network 3.5 years now, 3.5 years ago. And previous to that, I was running big recruitment teams up and down the country, traveling a lot, and managing the teams. So the first thing that I thought of at the time was, I'm not actually doing what I enjoy doing. I'm traveling a lot. I'm managing junior consultants that are being trusted with our customers. so people with not very much experience are being trusted with our best clients, and the people with most experience, i.e. me and my senior leadership team, weren't. We were being inefficient. So I wanted to set up my own business specifically to challenge that. I don't ever have any plans to be a huge recruitment business, because I always want to be completely on the coalface speaking to my clients. That was the first thing. The second thing was, I wanted something that was mission aligned. And this is a crucial thing. And I think you alluded to it before when you were talking about your team. And there's all sorts of different opportunities for people out there at the moment in multiple different industries, ranging from, I always use the example of gambling on one side, and then the kind of technology for good aspect on the other side. And the people that are aligned to your mission are much more likely to come and join your company than, let's say, a gambling company, a crypto company, whatever it is, something that isn't particularly, purpose-led. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you're much more likely to retain those people if they are all pushing in the right direction. And you mentioned it before, they buy into your mission, they buy into your values, they live those values day in, day out. And specifically with startups, if you're looking to scale from that, you need people that have got, there's nowhere to hide, is there? So you need people. You need people that are all pushing in the same direction.
It's that culture element as well. I always feel like with any job, people sort of, you join for the job description, but you stay for the people. And if you have a great culture and you're mission led, it's just a much more sort of motivating place to be. And especially it works so much of our lives, right? So you got to enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's more rewarding, isn't it? So if someone's just there to collect a paycheck, then the chances are that someone with a bigger paycheck is going to come knocking, and they're going to leave. If you get someone there that's really bought into what they're doing, then there's a good chance they're going to stay for the long term. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we do.
Brilliant.
Alex, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Guys, it's been Alex Clarke, the co-founder and CEO of Black Bull Biochar. Thanks again.
Thanks, Lee. Speak soon. Bye.
Cheers.